We stood in the parking lot, Ashley, Ainsley, and myself, placing groceries into the car after a long week of packing and traveling to Grand Junction. We were hungry, we were tired, and we were low on supplies and eager to get our purchases back to the house and continue unpacking the boxes. You know how it is after a long journey or a move. And as I unloaded the last bag into the car, closed the trunk, and walked around to the passenger door, I happened to glance up. It was a liminal moment, stuck between ordinary time and sacred time. You see, the color of the sky had caught my eye, and as I stared into the movement of the sunset as it cast its colors onto the red rocks of the Colorado National Monument, royal purples, passionate pinks, glowing blues, and dashes of red, for a moment the world stopped. The space around me was engulfed in an evening dusk as the sun set on the west. I remember my heart beating from the newness of this place, from the sense of exploration and adventure, the task of moving boxes and belongings into a new home, the fear of perhaps being lost and disoriented in a new landscape. But like a compass that has spun its story and finally landed the needle toward direction and hope, I felt relief and calm looking at the warm embrace of the sunset. And I turned 360 degrees, taking in the shapes and the sounds and the volume of this grand valley. The Book Cliff white ribbon snaked northwest to northeast, capped by Mount Garfield. The Grand Mesa lifted its voice and trailed off to the east, and the Colorado National Monument and its red cliffs loomed in the west. And in the center, I and my family kept safe and sheltered by these magnificent mesas. These giants of the Grand Valley they're like a sacred vessel holding space for the miracle that is Grand Junction within its carry. And as I was thinking about this sermon and this experience, I remembered that I had this beautiful clay jar that has what looks like mesas around the edges of it. And like the mesas that surround us, this vessel encloses things. It keeps it safe. It's a clay jar for keeping. In ministry, there is a term called holding space when you are in the midst of something. If you are going through tough moments of difficulty, if you are celebrating profound joys and laughter, when someone sits with you, whether they speak or they remain silent, if they are with you in that moment, they hold space with you. In the pulse and the breath and the scream and emotional heave of this world, another person can hold space with you by doing so, sustain a space where God can be experienced as close, within, and abiding. Holding space happens often. Sometimes it is unperceived. Sometimes it is happening continuously. For the moments in which we are in need of being kept in this way, we are in need of being held. And I believe that there are moments in which we experience this being kept in unceasing manners. Moments like today, when both the extreme joy and gladness are present in the celebration of ministry, like my calling to serve this church, and the deep sorrow in concluding this chapter of ministry, saying goodbye, farewell, and adieu. For such moments, I am watching for those holding space for others. Reverend Fred Rogers, host of the PBS series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, reminds us to look for the helpers, Fred Rogers often told this story about when he was a boy and would see scary things on the news. He said, "My mother would always say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" To this day, Mr. Rogers said, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. Like Mr. Rogers, Reverend Rogers, I like to look for those who are holding space. It is today that we are blessed to have Reverend Sue Art, our conference minister, and Reverend Wendy Kidd, our Western Association moderator, present with us, holding space, keeping us in the presence of God. We are glad and blessed, Reverend Sue and Wendy, for your keeping sacred space for us today. As I reflect on the last 2 years, 8 months, 14 days, 2 hours, and 40 minutes, 987 days, I feel I have been holding space for this people, my beloved faith community. I made a promise to keep you, to hold you, and be with you, and bear witness to the faith and ministry of each of you, of all of us. And it has been my sacred duty and privilege to pray with you, laugh with you, cry, and be your keeper. A keeper, by the way, is also a position in the wizarding world, in the sport of Quidditch, which is in the wizarding world of Harry Potter and the brilliant mind of J.K. Rowling. Those of you who know me know that I love J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter novels, and I find so much faith and hope in their stories. In Quidditch, which is a sport, there is one keeper per team, kind of like a goalie, and it is their job to guard 3 goalposts, attempting to stop the other team's chasers from scoring. So maybe I was your keeper, guarding the goals from the chasers. For me, this is kind of a much more active image of my ministry, flying around by the seat of my pants, playing the liturgical game of faith. Or maybe I was just your pastor, quietly holding space, sitting and abiding with each and every single one of you. The choice of how to see the past is yours. All I know is that I wrapped you in the warmth of my soul these nearly 3 years, just as the soul of the Grand Valley wrapped me and my family in the warm embrace of red, green, and golden white mesas that first day as I finished putting supplies and groceries into the car. And as I stood in wonder and awe of such love displayed in the mountains, I knew that I was kept. For you see, our God is a keeper. Psalm 121 proclaims what my soul experienced that twilight moment at the beginning of this ministry. The Lord is your keeper, says the psalm. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. So our God is a keeper. Am I right? Amen. Our God is a keeper. Just like you might say, that one's a keeper. As the presence that keeps watch, and perhaps more than keeps faith, hope, and love present in our midst and hearts, God keeps us. When we do not pay attention, it perhaps is unnoticeable. Like a prayer said in silence, we may not know who prays for us. Like the sacred moments that I have experienced in my ministry, those small moments of sitting alone with someone, visiting the discomforted, the sick, the dying, the jubilated. Sometimes I wonder if my presence is ever noticed. But that is okay, because I am not the one for whom these moments exist. But when we pay attention, we see it, we know it, we feel it. God is keeping us. I have lived this knowledge during my ministry here. I have looked to the hills from where my help comes, and I have learned this about God, my keeper. I offer to you these things I have learned from the hills this morning. First, that the keeper neither slumbers nor sleeps. Second, that the keeper will protect you from all evil. And third, the keeper will guide your going out, your coming in. It was at least 9 months before I first went up to the Grand Mesa after coming to Grand Junction. I don't know why I didn't get up there sooner. And I didn't know what the Mesa was all about. But one day we took a trip and wandered the roads near the top. And even though it was summer, there was still snow on top of that beautiful forested mesa. I remember most about that trip feeling surprised, in awe, shocked, almost like the first time I tried Ernstrom's toffee and chocolate and deliciously fell in love with it. It was just this surprise and delightfulness. The evergreen trees, the black volcanic rocks, the crisp, cool breeze that swooped over the lakes and treetops. It is a different world from our fertile Grand Valley there on Grand Mesa. I was surprised, like someone who had fallen asleep and is abruptly awoken. I was awoken to the beauty of the Mesa, of God's diverse creation in our midst. The sleeper never slumbers nor sleeps, the psalm tells us. And you will have moments that you are awoken to the awesome reality of God's love bared forth before you. So whether it is a surprising visit to Grand Mesa's majestic alpine, or in holding a newborn baby for the first time, or talking to a stranger or a long-lost loved one, and discovering commonalities and building bridges, Jesus tells us to keep watch and stay awake. I believe he tells us this so we can share our awe of God's love with the world. But don't take my word for it. Go up to the mesas. One of the first suggestions for a youth group activity by one of our youth was to hike up to the mesas, specifically Mount Garfield. And our youth's eagerness was full-blown, perhaps because it is not an easy climb, and one they found they would like to cross off their list of accomplishments before graduating high school here in Grand Junction. It is a hard climb because it is hot and dry, and this is especially true in the summertime when they wanted to go hiking. And the loose sand and the rocks can be dangerous. You have to have the right plan, the right footwear. That said, I have not yet climbed Mount Garfield, and that one may remain on my to-do list for the time being. I did, however, take a trip with the family up over the Book Cliffs, on up to Rangeley and Dinosaur National Monument. Again, I was surprised by the difference in climate and landscape as we drove over that white mesa, winding our way on the road like a patron at the public library, looking for the right book, both knowing what to look for and wishing to be surprised by browsing the shelves. At the top of the Book Cliffs, we could see for miles. We took a break for the typical travel delays, the bathroom at a strategically placed porta potty at the very top of the hill, diaper change for the kids, granola bars for everyone, and drinking fluids to keep the family hydrated in the warm summer sun. And so this break provided a moment to survey the landscape, and Ainsley spotted smoke. Sure enough, when we looked closely out there on the horizon, there was a fire burning to the north of the Book Cliffs, which thankfully was already being tended to by fire personnel. We did check. Our journey continued aware of the fire, but watching the smoke, we knew what roads to avoid, what detours to make. You know, in the story of Moses leading the Israelites from slavery to freedom, God leads the people with a pillar of fire and smoke. God will show us the way. Faith is a journey, and the path is not always clear. There will be dangers, toils, and snares, which we have already come through, and which will remain. But grace, which I believe is the love of God, will guide our way. In ministry, as in life, there will be red flags. There will be smoke. There will be warning signs. It is good to pay attention and heed their warning. And where there is smoke, there is fire. The balance that faith demands is not always of eternal surprise and depending on luck to get us through the tough times. There must be preparation, planning, and strategy. There must be willingness to alter course when the fires are spotted. There also must be compassion and concern to tend to the fires, extinguish their flame before the burning bush of the wilderness leads to flames in the oasis and the sanctuary of the community. Calling out bad behavior, distrust, miscommunication, and dysfunctionality are difficult but important things to do. If no one reports that there is smoke, we will become surprised by the fire when it arrives at our doorstep. Preparation and flexibility are needed to quell flames of destruction. And so the task of the church, yes, even this church, is to pay attention to all the warnings of evil and sin in the world. The smoke of inequality, access to housing, and the widening income gap. Did my microphone go off?
No, it's back.
The smoke of inequality, access to housing, and the widening income gap. All right, talking about smoke. It's okay to hold your voice. We need to pay attention to the heat of racism and blood on the streets of black and brown bodies. The cries of imprisoned children and those seeking sanctuary at our borders. The car dashboard warning light of climate change. The flags raised by lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender souls seeking an end to oppression and discrimination and gender inequality and sexual violence. The sound of guns being loaded that announces violence and war. The touch and feel of falsehood, that which is fake and trusts recoil. What better way for us to fight the fires of mistrust than with the words of Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life? There is danger in the world as well as hurt and pain and fear, but we are not alone in the world. We have one another, and we have a keeper, one who goes with us on the journey and helps us to notice the smoke, to address the challenges, and sometimes to even chart a new course. And so I end my journey where it began, at the red cliffs of the national park at our doorstep, the Colorado National Monument. There is a road in the monument, which was first built in the 1910s. It took almost 11 years to get constructed. It's called the Serpent's Trail, and it had at the time the nickname of the crookedest road in the world. And it winds up from the southern face of the National Monument and was part of the main road until the 1950s, when the current road that we can now drive was constructed to make the path easier. But at the time, that was the easy path to get up. For those several decades when it was the main route into the park, motorists had to drive backwards up the road before the days of fuel pumps in vehicles, because if you went uphill, the fuel would flow to the back of the chamber and it wouldn't get into the engine. They did that because of the steep incline of the road. And if they drove forward up, the car would not get gas and lack sufficient fuel flowing to the engine. So the pioneers of the past had to face a lot of adversity, but that did not stop them from making the trip backwards in a car, uphill, in the heat, without guardrails. We sometimes do not know where the road will lead. We may face a climb unlike anything else we have ever encountered. We may even have to move gaily forward by going backward. But my advice is to make the trip. When I have found myself overwhelmed with the worries of this world, I have found the grace at the Colorado National Monument. I've gone to drive the mesa and found solace there. And when I start the road, I enter on one side of the monument and I drive through. By the time I emerge on the other side of the monument, I am found again. I am cradled by God and let to rest for a while in her gentle, restoring embrace. God has kept my going into this ministry, and now she keeps my going out. Thankfully, I have not felt like I was driving backwards these many years, but driving a nicely paved new road with painted lines and signs, and thank God, guardrails. This road has been worth the journey, and I am thankful that you have traveled with me on it. As I take my leave as your pastor and teacher, remember, be surprised, watch for smoke, and make the journey. God is a keeper in more ways than one. And so are you, my lovelies. My beautiful people of God, you are all keepers. So keep one another just as I have kept you, just as God keeps you now. Amen.